If you've ever heard the expression, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, what it generally refers to is how it's the most vocal, the most outspoken, the most public of us that get the most attention. However, what it also implies is that it's the quieter ones, the ones who keep things to themselves, who keep their pain private, like a cat, for instance, that might not get the help that they deserve. And it's very often these people, and in this particular case, artists, that can slip away into the shadows without you ever even noticing. And it's amazing how many times I've worked with artists and students or have seen YouTubers that I've followed for years that it dawned on me at a certain point, where did they go? I haven't seen a video from them in years. Or one of my students or friends will mention an artist that they love and I go, yeah, they haven't posted a video in years. What the hell happened to them? And sure enough, I go on their channel and I realize they haven't posted anything in 5 or 6 years. Happens all the time. So I want to list why these things happen, because there's a very good chance that perhaps some of your favorite artists out there disappeared without you even noticing. But more importantly, that you might be one of those invisible artists. You might be one of those people that decided to curl up in a ball in the back corner, in the shadowed corner of your room, and try to escape an art career for reasons that you might not even want. And maybe give you a little bit more insight into why you did this, and if I could have my way, have you come back into the light again and give your art career another chance. And I would argue that one of the most common reasons why this happens for artists is because we're introverted. And as introverts, we don't like a lot of attention drawn to ourselves. Now, I don't identify as an introvert. I run a YouTube channel, for God's sakes. I speak my mind all the time. So many artists don't like drama. They don't want to call attention to themselves. So what happens is they stop posting. They stop sharing. And they do so quietly because they don't want to draw attention of any kind, positive or negative, to themselves. They don't want to draw attention to themselves because they want to make a quiet escape, just like a cat hiding underneath the bed when they feel that their time is coming. It's a very sad thing, but this is what us as animals do all the time, don't we? Now, why do we do that? I think it's because we very often have this, what I would call a misconception, is that silence is less threatening than confusion. I think that when we start off as young kids drawing, we have this passion for drawing. I'm doing Kirby drawings and manga and anime stuff. I'm not thinking about my career. I'm not thinking about success and money. But then at a certain point, I decide to start taking my career more seriously. And now I start to mingle with a more professional crowd, either my peers in school or my peers professionally. And as such, we tend to put this unrealistic expectation on ourselves that we need to perform all the time. We need to always be in our A game. And that if we don't feel secure, if we don't feel clear, if we feel confused about our careers, about our skills, about the direction that we want to take our careers, that this is stuff that we should know at this point. And because that's something that holds us back so much and causes us so much exhaustion and so much stress over so many years, maybe into your 20s, 30s, and 40s, it's very common, that we don't want to embarrass ourselves. We don't want to confess about the fact that we still don't have that sense of clarity on our career. And this draws me to the second reason why. Just because our skill improves doesn't mean that our clarity did. I would argue that 75 to 80% of all the private consultations that I have with my students are artists that in many cases have incredibly advanced talent. They're very good artists. But what they lack is insight into the type of careers that they might be best suited for. This is a very popular topic. And when you combine talent without technical focus, that can become extremely frustrating. It can become extremely exhausting because we're putting so much energy and effort just into being productive. And because we've seen successes, we've seen ourselves produce artwork that we really, really like, that we're very proud of, but we can't repeat that success consistently, that we start to get very annoyed with ourselves. We start to get very frustrated with ourselves. And the whole process of trying to churn out artwork that we like starts to become a bit of a gamble. And when you start gambling on your on how proud you feel, gambling on your feelings of success with your artwork, that compounded over many years of an art career that might span 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it really starts to eat you up inside. Now, why is that such a problem? Well, it's because, especially in the modern landscape of social media, Instagram, me being a YouTuber, having to produce and share artwork with you all the time, I can say from personal experience, something that I feel all the time, and I'm sure many artists who share their artwork publicly can attest to, is the fact that sometimes I just don't like what I'm drawing. I just feel like I had a shitty drawing week. I draw very, very consistently and I keep the momentum going. But geez, the ability to just consistently have bangers every single week can be extremely exhausting because sometimes I'm in the flow and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I have an amazing inspiration and I ride it and I can't wait to share it with you. And other times I feel like I just need to produce something in order to have it in my video. So one of the things that I had to learn to do as not only a professional artist, but as a content creator, as a YouTuber who shares this stuff regularly, is stop trying to be impressive all the time. Not everything that I do is going to be impressive. Just because I'm a teacher doesn't mean that everything I produce is going to be a masterpiece. Sometimes I'm going to have flops. They're going to suck. But I had to abandon the need to look professional all the time. I had to abandon this unwritten rule that everything that I produce needs to be impressive. It doesn't need to be impressive. I feel that the most important contribution I can make as a YouTuber is just to show you that I keep working. And sometimes I'm going to have bangers and sometimes people aren't going to give a shit about my work. And that's just a part of the game. And this is something that we all have to embrace. This is one of the reasons as well why a lot of content creators really struggle to produce work. It's because they might have wanted to produce a video, but because they don't feel good enough about the artwork that they produced for that video, they end up putting triple or quadruple the time. And furthermore, the desire to produce that professional work puts so much pressure on them to look impressive that it completely destroys their ability to be impressive because they're pulled outside of their own creative head and now they're focused on the audience rather than their creation. Tell me if you don't relate to that one. So what do? We withdraw. We pull back. We hide. If we consistently have this feeling like we're not producing things and days and now weeks and maybe even months pass, that starts to make us feel a little bit incompetent. And that incompetence starts to exhaust the hell out of us until a certain point we go, maybe this isn't for me. And they withdraw. And that's the danger. That's the red flag you need to pay attention to. And what happens? We burn out. And you know how that burnout usually manifests in ourselves verbally and outwardly? We say, quote, maybe I'm not cut out for this. One of the things that I share with my students, I just did this morning with an amazing artist from Russia, making that distinction between what is it psychologically that makes a concept artist versus a designer versus a fine artist versus an illustrator, and to be able to actually demonstrate and visualize that on a page. As soon as you do that, it's amazing how many artists realize, geez, I've been looking in the wrong place. I know I did for many years. And this is the stuff they don't teach in schools that frustrates me. But what do? You tell yourself, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Not cut out for what? Studio work? Maybe not. I would argue that most of us probably aren't cut out for studio work because studio work, at least in the game industry sense of the word, has only been around for a very short period of time. Prior to the 1990s, when I started my career professionally, most artists were independent. Most artists were illustrators. Most artists did freelance stuff. Some artists worked in animation studios and stuff like that. But the gross majority of us were all independent. We had our independent voice. Now we're all expected to industrialize ourselves and all fit into this niche called the gaming industry. It's amazing how many artists I've seen that worked in big studios like Blizzard and Riot Games and Bungie and all of these different things who quit and say, it wasn't for me. I dreamt my entire life to be a Blizzard artist, and then I did it for years and I went, my joy in that industry was very, very limited. It was very finite. And they end up realizing after experiencing it firsthand, they felt much more empowered and inspired and felt much more valuable working independently. When you tell yourself, maybe I'm not cut out for this, you are cut out for it. You're not expressing that you're not cutting out for it. You're expressing that you're burning out, that you're putting so much of yourself into something and you're not getting that emotional and physical, visual, professional reward from it. You just feel like you're dumping your energy into this desire and it's not feeding you back. So it's at that point that you need to reassess your values. You need to start reevaluating, where am I putting my energy and where can I redirect it in a way that's far more productive to get me back into that feeling like I'm actually finding growth. This is why I would strongly advise you. If you're at that point in your life where you're sitting there saying to yourself, I really don't feel I'm cut out for this. I've been doing this for so many years and I just feel completely exhausted. That what's burning you out is that because you're staying silent about that pain, because you're staying silent about that insecurity and you're keeping it to yourself, you're not reaching out to a professional and getting that professional feedback on your work, somebody who has the skill, who knows what needs to be done and can be very objective about their feedback to you, that you turn that pain and that doubt inwards. And it's that burns you out. It's that inward blame, it's that inward struggle that exhausts you because you have all these doubts and you don't have any of the answers. You can't tell anymore what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, despite your many, many years of experience. This is extremely common. So I can say with absolute confidence, I can say with complete conviction after working with thousands of artists and having gone through this in my own career, artists don't quit because they stopped caring. I don't know a single artist who ever walked away from art or quit art or gave up on art because they didn't care about it anymore. Not one. They quit because they were trying too hard to find the solutions themselves. When at that point in their life, they needed to talk to somebody. They needed to reach out to somebody. If they had the professional and personal and technical insight into what the problem was, they would have fixed it right away. So they try to fix it themselves. But because they're not reaching out to anybody on the outside, because they're not reaching out to a professional to help them, give them guidance on what they need to do to get that momentum back, they haven't yet learned how to redirect effort and motivation into momentum. They don't have momentum. They just have effort. And that's what burns you out. So you need to speak to somebody who can look at what you've got and say, these are the ingredients that you got. Add this ingredient, and now the ball's going to start rolling again. And you have my word, 100% of the time, no matter which mentorship, whether it be with Anthony Jones or Clinton Diana Kearley or Tyler Edlin or Bobby Chu or anybody else that I name drop. We need, all of us at some point in our life, will rely on one of these or even all of the above professionals in order to get the momentum. And the reason why I name drop all these artists all the time, the reason why I'm always mentioning these same names all the time, is because that's my way of paying it forward to them, because something they shared over the years helped me get my momentum back. And I'm sure you can relate to the feeling that when you've been struggling with something technically, personally, professionally for so many years, and then somebody turns to you and says, have you ever considered that principle? You can have these incredible epiphanies that completely unlock your career. It's amazing how many times I've reached out and watched the content from one of these different artists, bought one of their gumroads, watched one of their lessons, joined one of their schools, and they had one ingredient was all I needed to unlock 15, 20 years of growth. So if what I shared with you sounds eerily relatable, then from my personal experiences and from my professional experience, you don't need motivation anymore. You need guidance. Sound good? With that said, since you stuck it out to the very end, I'm going to teach you the Polish phrase of the day. Because I'm trying to learn Polish, very much a bare bones beginner here, and we might as well learn together. So today's phrase is nie ukrywaj swoich problemów. Nie ukrywaj swoich problemów, which means don't hide your problems. Okay, so once again, nie ukrywaj swoich problemów. Don't hide your problems. Write that down in the comments below if you stuck it out to the very, very end. Remember, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So if there's an issue you're dealing with, be vocal about it. And if you feel like you're hitting a dead end, you're hitting a rock, and you feel like you've been keeping that pain to yourself and it's burning you out, reach out to a professional, somebody who you feel communicates in a way that you click with, and get yourself over that hurdle so you can get momentum back into your life. Sound good? With that said, I love you all with all my heart, and happy painting. Take care.